This finale, oh my God, it was weeks and weeks of it. And I'm just so annoyed. And yeah, I don't think it's terrible, but I'm moving it forward here because we have to talk about it because other people could not stop talking about it.
Is there anything more heartbreaking than a beloved TV show building up to a much anticipated final bow and then utterly blowing it? It happens more often than it should. In some cases, it's a big swing and a miss. In others, it's a lack of closure. And in some cases, a disastrous finale can harm the cultural cachet of a long-running series overall. Now, the Great Pop Culture Debate podcast looks back at some of the most notable televised blunders as we attempt to name the worst TV series finale of all time. You all thought I was the good guy, but at the last minute, I'm gonna fuck my nephew and burn this whole goddamn city to the ground. Deal with it, Westeros! I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please help me welcome my panel for this episode. She doesn't know who's dead, alive, or in purgatory, but no worries. The journey was the friends she made along the way. Now go walk through those glowing doors. It's Joelle Boedecker.
We don't have to go back, Eric.
We don't, and if Evangeline Lilly's acting is involved, I'd like to stay away. Next, she left her only child with a serial killer and drove a boat into a hurricane. What could go wrong? It's Karissa Kloss.
As the great American drag queen Tatiana once said, choices.
Indeed. I look forward to the miniseries that will attempt and fail to launder your legacy. Finally, he has told a story for 10 years about meeting his future partner, only to end up fucking another one of his best friends who had been part of the story all along. It's Kevin Dillon.
What can I say, Eric? I just needed the green light from my kids to get some ass.
Kevin's How I Met Your Daddy spinoff is now available on his OnlyFans. Now, if you're curious about how we ended up with this top 16, become a Patreon supporter of the podcast or check out the bonus preview of this episode on your podcast platform of choice, in which we go through the whole bracket up to this point. And don't forget, you can head to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the listener bracket for this episode so you can play along with us at home. And with that out of the way, everything's awful. So let's move on to these debates. First, it's a unanimous victory, or is that loss, for ultimate number one seed Game of Thrones, which ascended the Iron Throne of bad series finales over 4-seed Seinfeld's provocative finish. And I do want to really stress here, we're talking about the worst series finale, so we're talking about which one is a poorer solution, right? So keep that in mind as you're listening to this episode. Next, another unanimous victory in a battle of the terrible vampire shows, as 2-seed True Blood sucks more than 3-seed The Vampire Diaries. Next, the panel is split between 5-seed House of Cards and 1-seed Pretty Little Liars. Joelle, why is House of Cards' finale a political disaster? Karissa, tell the truth about Pretty Little Liars' disappointing finale. Karissa, please go first.
Yeah, Pretty Little Liars is one of those shows that I watched a bunch of seasons of until it got to almost the end, and I just finally said, I can't do it anymore. They can't keep dangling the solution and upping the ante and then pulling the rug out at the last second. It's like torture porn, and I hate it. So, yeah, I was about a season behind, but I did watch the finale episode, which I had already heard about. It is pretty well maligned across a lot of the culture from the time. And it did the thing that happens with a lot of shows that tease a mystery through the whole series, reveal it at the end. It's a very dissatisfying solution, especially in this case where it turns out the person is someone you never even knew existed until the very finale. I mean, it's almost like it was all a dream, except it's the reverse. It's like, here's another character, and also, they're the reason all this happened. Bye, see ya. You know, it just feels cheap and really unsatisfying for something that did have a lot of seasons of really tight, who could this be, how is this happening moments.
There's so many words that you just said that describe my dating life. Cheap. Who could this be? How is this happening? Yeah, that's me. It's my aesthetic. Joelle, talk to us about House of Cards.
Oh, House of Cards. The first thing I want to point out is I pulled my lovely Joelle spreadsheet together, and one of the things that I did was the IMDb rating for each one of the series finales, and House of Cards has the lowest on this list at a 2.6. So that's my first.
I need to interrupt here and make sure everybody knows, because I don't think people know this. Joelle comes to these goddamn debates with the fucking receipts. She has data for all of them, and I love it. So please, Joelle, feel free to pepper that information liberally throughout this episode. Go on.
I have viewership numbers, I have episode titles, and I have IMDb ratings, and then I have random quotes from the internet.
You're so good.
But yeah, so 2.6 rating. I never saw a number that low during all of the research I did for this show. The thing with the House of Cards finale is they just stopped trying. I think that's what we established in round one here. The final season made very little sense. All the characters just changed who they were completely to make this story that doesn't make sense try to make sense, and failed at that. And then the finale, I don't remember really what happens in most of it because it felt like any other episode of this dumb show. And then at the very end, we watch the pregnant president, stab the guy that, has all the secrets and she can't let him live. It was nonsense. And we don't see anything after that. It was just, that's how it ended. This guy's dead.
We say nonsense, but this was in a pre-Trump world, I believe. And if you told me now that Trump had stabbed someone in
the Oval,
I would believe. But the only thing that man's stabbing in the Oval is a hamburger. So there you go. Kevin, where are you on this one?
This is tough because this is a debate between a show I never watched and a show I gave up on. So, I'm going to go with House of Cards based on that because I did watch it and there was potential for that finale to be much better.
Yeah, I tend to go with House of Cards too, and that is weird because Pretty Little Liars is a 1 seed. And
can I just reveal that what is revealed in Pretty Little Liars is that one of the characters has an identical evil twin who happens to be the one who did all these things as revenge for this thing that was like a misinterpreted situation, even like years and years ago. An identical evil twin that no one knew existed. That's the person for 7+ seasons was like tormenting this foursome, and the girl marries her teacher. Like all the things happen, and they're living their lives. But anyway, identical evil sister.
That might have swayed me, Karissa, because
I forgot.
I myself am an unknown identical evil twin who murdered and replaced the actual Eric Rezsnyak, and I am known for tormenting foursomes. So you may have swung me back to Pretty Little Liars.
Me too.
Which is...
That's why it's a 1 seed. It's awful.
Kevin, were you saying that you're also known for tormenting foursomes, or you're in the same boat as switching your vote?
Both can be true. Both can be true. Oh yeah, that's right. Because the one girl. So I guess I did dip in and out because my sister watched this show. Yeah, one of the girls dates her teacher, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Episode 1. That happens. Episode 1 of that show. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Oh god.
But she doesn't know he's the teacher. But then it never
until
stops.
episode 2, and then it continues on.
Okay, I'm going with Pretty Little Liars. I'm switching back.
So it is a 1 seed, and that is important to note.
Yeah.
The other thing we've kind of discussed in the first round is this particular poll got hundreds, like over 500 votes, and I do think it skewed very heavily toward, let's just say, the CW era of shows. Even though this wasn't a CW show, I know it was an ABC Family, I think. Is that what it was on?
Freeform, yeah.
Freeform, whatevs, yeah. So that being said, we will go ahead and advance Pretty Little Liars into round 3. Next, the panel is currently split. Speaking of, 2 CW 2000 staples, 2 seed Gossip Girl, and 3 seed The 100. Joelle, why does The 100 receive a failing grade? I will explain why nobody has hugs or kisses for the finale of Gossip Girl. Joelle, do you want to go first?
I can certainly try. The backstory for me on The 100 is I had never watched an episode of it before the pandemic. And then around May of the pandemic, I started it from episode 1 and I binged it across the next 2 months. That show is something. It would not make sense if you don't binge it because like the words they use and the characters that keep dying and coming back to life and anything in between, you kind of have to binge it to make sense of it. So if any of you watch the finale without any context, I can understand why it didn't make sense, but as someone that watched it, it also didn't make sense. So, we all have that experience together. All I remember, and I did rewatch it today and it still was baffling. It was a lot of like deep thought, humanity conversations for the entire episode. Like, are you good enough to transcend whatever transcending is? These aliens get to decide if you're gonna be representative of humanity or not, and all of humanity will die if this one person makes a mistake. And of course she did. The show was not like that at all. So this is like complete nonsense compared to the first 99 episodes. By the way, one fun fact, this was the 100th episode of the 100. So that was cute. That's like a thumbs up from me on that one. But that's all it gets. No, the show made no sense. The point of it made no sense. People were just bad, so they get to live forever alone, not procreate, apparently. That was the final scene. Yep. I don't know how to defend it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds dreadful. So let me talk to a little bit about Gossip Girl. I think the critical issue with the finale of Gossip Girl is, of course, the revelation of Gossip Girl and that it was Dan Humphries all along. By the way, sidebar here. I challenge my fellow panelists, let's make a list of the number of recurring issues that these finales have, because I actually think there's like a 5-point list of what could make a bad finale, and I think we can identify them over the course of this. This goes to Karissa's Pretty Little Liars thing too. A revelation of a show-long mystery that makes absolutely no sense, because Dan being Gossip Girl defies logic, and if is true, makes Dan look like a total sociopath who has put numerous people close to him, his sister, his now wife by the end of the show, through absolute hell in his bid for attention and social clout. It is, in a word, super gross. That said, other parts of the finale are actually pretty satisfying in that Blair and Chuck finally get married. It is a marriage of convenience, but they are together nonetheless. Rufus ends up with actual Lisa Loeb herself, which love that. Lisa Loeb. And then also you get a little cameo by Kristen Bell, who has been the voice of Gossip Girl for the entire season, which I thought was adorable. But I think it is that central issue of we had a series-long mystery. We had written ourselves into a corner. We kind of did what we could to get out of it. Oops, we fucked. So, Karissa, where are you on this one?
Gossip Girl's a higher seed. I'm going to go with the 100 here because I never watched Gossip Girl. I did watch the finale. And I did watch the first few seasons of the 100, and then it got real weird for me and I dipped out, but I did watch the finale and holy geez, like it is bananas. And so, yeah, I'm with the 100 here because as much as Gossip Girl rewrites history, 100 like rewrites rules and lore and everything about the planet.
I will say technically Gossip Girl falls into the science fiction category because there's no way physically Dan Humphrey could have been Gossip Girl. Right, I believe someone proved it. Like he would have had to like be flying across the bridge or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Kevin, where are you on this one?
Don't worry, Eric. It's okay. His sister gave him permission to talk all that shit about her. Don't worry about it. Oh my God. The Gossip Girl ending is one of the most maddening endings for a show that actually consistently was very steady throughout its run. Yeah. It had its peaks and valleys, but was always what it was. And then you do that in the finale. Nope. Gossip Girl.
Blair Waldorf supremacy. Okay, I think that's 2 for Gossip Girl and 2 for the 100. Gossip Girl is the higher seed, and so therefore Gossip Girl would move into round 3. Next, it's another unanimous victory for 1 seed How I Met Your Mother, which pushed out the awful retcon ending of 5 seed Roseanne. But we need to talk about Roseanne, right? So in our checklist, we're all keeping a checklist. We have series-long mysteries that make absolutely no sense. Let's put on completely changing the rules of a show. Right? I think that's another entry we can have on there. Let's now bring the retcon ending where they rewrite history, which was what happened to the original 1990s Roseanne. For those who do not know, the last, I think 2 seasons of Roseanne, or was it 1? I can't remember how many. It was 2? Yeah.
I think it was just 1.
Okay, just one. So the previous season ends with the long-suffering Connor family in they're somewhere in Illinois, Lanford, Illinois. Yes, winning the lotto. And then all of their dreams come true. And so for the next season, it's super weird because they have all this money and they can do whatever they want. And Roseanne's just super odd. Everybody's behaving weirdly, right? You get to the finale, and I think it's not till like the last 5 minutes of the finale, if that. It's a voiceover from Roseanne who has revealed that actually the whole last season was a dream. Dan had a heart attack and died. She basically wrote all of this as her own fan fiction to get herself through it. And there were many other like horrible tragedy things. Like Mark was actually with Darlene, I think, which makes no fucking sense. It's just so, and it's all in a voiceover as like this little like asterisk at the end.
She's in the basement.
Yes.
She's in the basement writing on her little typewriter or whatever in the basement. That was the part I remember, the visual of that.
It was just such a weird decision for a show that was hyper real in a lot of ways and spoke to a section of America that I don't think had really seen itself seen on TV in the way that Roseanne did for most of its career. And I think and then what happened after with Roseanne herself, which is a tragedy, let me just say that, has crippled what otherwise was up to that point considered to be a gold standard sitcom. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say about that? Kevin?
The lunacy of the finale kind of speaks to the QAnon-ness that became Roseanne, just being honest. And like, it just speaks to her loss of grasp on what made her show special. And it's just genuinely unfortunate. Like, it was one of the preeminent 80s, 90s sitcoms. And it was just such a whiff of an ending. I was trying to think of shows that were sitcoms that failed their endings. And I honestly, Roseanne, outside of another show, which we'll talk about that we haven't yet, whiffed that finale more spectacularly than any other sitcom I've ever seen.
And it really did hurt the legacy of the show and her. Karissa, anything else to add or?
Nope.
And Joelle?
I think it made it exactly where it should.
Yeah, Joelle?
The only other thing I would say is that they even hated that finale so much that they retconned their finale, 15 years later.
Yep.
And then that show took a nosedive, and now it's the Connors.
Yeah. And it wasn't the show that took a nosedive. Again, it was Roseanne herself that
ruined everything. Yeah.
She ruined everything. So we are the architects of our own misfortune. I say it all the time. So that being said, we are going to go ahead and move How I Met Your Mother. Is that what we said?
Yep.
Yes.
Into the next round. Next, the panel is evenly split between two very different shows about two lead women, 3-seed Killing Eve and 2-seed Gilmore Girls. Kevin, take a stab at taking out Killing Eve's competition. Joelle, why does the swan song for the residents of Stars Hollow leave you feeling, well, hollow? Kevin, please go first.
Oh, Killing Eve, you had so much potential. How do I love thee? How do I count the ways? Like, this show was, season 1 of Killing Eve is one of the best first seasons of a show. You had Phoebe Waller-Bridge as the head writer. You have Sandra Oh in this role that's really spectacular and showing the range of her talent. And then you have new actress Jodie Comer playing this sociopathic villain named Villanelle, who is essentially created this cat and mouse game with Sandra Oh's character. And I think you had a great cast, a great ensemble. I personally saw the threads start to fall apart in season 2 when Phoebe Waller-Bridge left. But you still had two terrific actresses at the lead, Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer, helming great material, great work. And there was not only this cat and mouse, but this will they, won't they, in their relationship, because there is... again, it's kind of like Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling. There is this because there is oddly some romantic chemistry between those two in the Silence of the Lambs movie. But there's also that here, and you build out this like seasons-long arc where the two don't ultimately kiss until the series finale. And then, sorry, spoiler alert, you kill Villanelle. In this almost in this anticlimactic way. It just doesn't work. it is also doing what a lot of shows on this list didn't necessarily do in their series finale, but it's the kill the queer character trope. And it really, Killing Eve had a huge queer fan base, huge queer fan base. And there was a celebration of this relationship throughout the many seasons the show was on, but to ultimately kill Jodie Comer's character in the series finale is such a middle finger to fans, to good writing. It's not even like you can't kill queer characters, because I don't want to say that that's true. That can be part of writing. It can be part of storytelling, but to do it in this violent and evil way that makes no sense for good writing, it's just unexcusable.
All right. So I'm going to pass this over to Joelle to talk about Gilmore Girls. And Joelle, I don't think we've actually talked about Gilmore Girls on the show. You love this show. Am I correct about that?
There was a period of time when the new series came out that I considered myself the renowned expert of Gilmore Girls. I think I've forgotten a little bit of what I knew, but yes, I am a Gilmore Girls aficionado for sure. So I know a lot of the history of the show, and one of the things that that happened in season 7 was the Paladinos left the show. There was contract issues, the CW versus WB shit that happened. I forget exactly whose fault was whose, but they left the show. And I'm pretty sure, from what I understand, she burned it to the ground before she left. So the way she ended season 6 was, here, have fun with this. They brought in Christopher, the father, and not in a way anyone wanted to see him come back. And then the writers took over for season 7 and had to undo that mess and then figure out how to wrap it up, because they weren't continuing it past that season. So they had a fool's errand ahead of them. They tried, but they weren't the Paladinos. So the entire season felt like you were reading, like, I don't know, the Chat GPT version of Gilmore Girls. It was just cheaply written. That's the only word I can come up with. Paladinos are known for like excessive dialogue and like 80-page scripts and things like that. And these just didn't feel as densely packed with, references and jokes and quippy humor. So anyway, you get to the final episode, and at this point you're just like, all right, just kill the show, please. And they just have the most basic ending. There was nothing like creative about it. It was just, oh, she graduates and she gets a job following Obama. That was my favorite thing. I was like, really? It felt weirdly unnecessarily simple, and everyone just had a better relationship at the end. Like, the whole crux of the show is this really stunted relationship between Lorelai and Emily, and at the end it's just like, hey, come over for dinner. Sure. Like, nothing changes. There's no awkwardness. The animosity should have stayed. That was my kind of opinion on that.
Thanks, Obama. Karissa, where are you on this one?
As much as I get that it's like a basic and annoying finale for Gilmore Girls, I think something else to add to the rubric of 5 things is killing off one of the main characters at the very end of the finale with no time to mourn, explain, like take a second to maybe acknowledge this thing that just happened. So that's why Killing Eve gets my vote here.
Okay, so we have 2 for Killing Eve, 1 for Gilmore Girls. If I voted for Gilmore Girls, it would advance because it is a 2 seed. But
Correct.
Based on what's been put forward for me, I actually am going to give it to Killing Eve because I do think the sins are greater based on what we've talked about. It sounds, again, we've a little bit talked about this with House of Cards in the first part. House of Cards got completely screwed by behind the scenes stuff going into its final season. The final season might have sucked by itself. We don't know. But I think the same thing happened to Gilmore Girls too, right? It was a show that was basically sabotaged by off-screen stuff, which ultimately then reflected in a piss poor final season. Killing Eve was at a very high level until all of a sudden, boop, it wasn't. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it to Killing Eve, which will move into round 3. Next, speaking of serial killers, it's another unanimous victory for 1 seed Dexter, which did in fact get away with murder. Of 5 seed How to Get Away with Murder. But Joelle, you wanted to plead your case on why How to Get Away with Murder's finale is so poor.
So I understand why Dexter is moving forward. I'm not going to deny its problems, and we'll get into that. How I Met Your Murderer. Here we are. How to Get Away with Murder is a show I forgot about for years. I forgot to finish it. I never got past season 2. But the very end, I watched it recently. The very end, that last episode was really comically funny. And we were talking about this before we started recording earlier. Like, when is a show so bad that it actually becomes good again? And I actually think that's what we're up against in How to Get Away with Murder. It was so poor. One of my favorite moments was Wes, who actually died much earlier.
Yes.
Season earlier.
Like season 2, I think.
No, it was like 4 or 5. It was later. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they kill off Wes, and then he starts appearing in this final season. And you're like, why is he showing up? Is he like a specter? What's happening? No. He's his son. Because they did a time jump at the very end, because there's another trope, the time jump.
Yep.
And there's the same actor that played Wes walking in, playing his son with an accent. And oh, that accent. It was comical. It was so bad it was comical, but honestly, funnier than Dexter. So there you go.
Yeah, and the thing about How to Get Away with Murder is it was always a ridiculous show. Like each season is it starts off pretty absurd, and then it gets more and more absurd, as Kevin said in the previous episode. Like, how is she still practicing law? How is she still a law professor?
Every person murdered somebody by the end of that series. Every person.
Yeah, it's just completely ridiculous. Whereas Dexter had a lot of really good. It's also ridiculous when you look at his body count, but there's some good stuff in Dexter. And How to Get Away with Murder was kind of always ridiculous, but this was absurd. It was absurdity. That being said, Dexter is the stench from Dexter lives on to this day, and so it will advance into the next round. And finally, in round 2, one more unanimous decision as the panel continues to be baffled by what the hell was going on at the end of 2 seed Lost, and we just did not care for the tale being told by 3 seed Once Upon a Time. And that is it for round 2. We're going to take a quick break to come up with a totally nonsensical plot twist that will infuriate our longtime listeners. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey listeners, it's Bob from the Great Pop Culture Debate. We hope you're enjoying this episode and that you're yelling back at your speakers telling us how wrong we are. Did you know that there's a much better way to tell us how you feel? Come kiki with our panelists on Discord. Our patrons at the $10 level get access to our exclusive Discord server, where you can share your thoughts about our decisions or just gab with our group about everything pop culture. It's like participating in your own episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Untucked. We have something for everyone to talk about, including reality TV, comics, news, nostalgia, and so much more. So if you love spirited debate and fabulous people, become a Patreon supporter today and join in on the conversation.
And we are back for round 3 of our worst TV series finale debate. Before we get into the Elite 8, I want our panelists to share their social media and what else they're working on so that we can reach out to you when we launch our ill-conceived reboot in a few years. Joelle, what's your socials and what are you working on?
My socials are pretty much dead these days, but I still am working on that Pocket Pod podcast with my friends, and we are talking about basically all things Nintendo at this point, not just Animal Crossing.
Love it.
And the
Fantastic.
Socials are the Pocket Pod everywhere.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Carissa, what are your socials and what are you working on?
You can find me, if you want to, at Karissa Kloss, all one word, on all platforms. And I think I'm doing a lot of podcast research. Might be reading some Babysitters Club books.
Ooh, how scandalous. Yes. We're keeping Karissa very busy right now. Actually, we're keeping everybody very busy. They're looking at me like this motherfucker over here. Thank you, Karissa. And Kevin, where can people find you and what are you working on?
You can find me on Twitter at ET Kevin's Mind. And then I'm on a bunch of them. I have a Blue Sky code. I have all that shit. If you want to find me, you can find me there. I don't really use it. I'm still a pretty active Twitter person. And what am I working on? Trying to be a sane human being. How about that?
Listen, in the 2020s, it's a full-time job. First of all, you can find me at Eric Rezsnyak on Twitter and Instagram, or just message the at Great Pop Culture Debate account on Insta, at GPCD on Mastodon, or at culture_debate on Twitter. We are still over there. We'd love to get off of it, but what are you going to do? Before we go on, I do want to point out, if you're sitting here listening, you care about TV finales, and you're like, why are you talking about the bad ones? We have already done an episode devoted to the best TV finales. I think several of the people on this episode were actually on that episode.
Yes.
And hilariously, more than one of the episodes on the worst TV finale bracket is also discussed in the best TV finale bracket. So as you can see, it's a lot of complicated feelings about these things, but you should go ahead and check that out on our website, greatpopculturedebate.com, or it's wherever you find your podcasts. Now let's move into round 3 before someone asks me to explain what the smoke monster was or why those statues had 4 toes. So first up, ultimate number 1 seed Game of Thrones versus 2 seed True Blood. We're going to go around the horn here in this HBO SmackDown. Joelle, where are you on this one?
I am with True Blood. Game of Thrones didn't offend me nearly enough. I thought the whole season was very even keeled, and that final episode was just wrapping it up. So it didn't bother me the way I think a lot of people that actually were fans of that show were bothered. But with True Blood, that final episode was just made no sense from just the storyline of that show. Suddenly, everyone is just getting married for no reason, that the patriarchy is alive and well with Bill. Then, I don't know, it's just all the things that happened, the beats didn't make sense to me. Sookie had to actually take Bill to the graveyard. Why? Bill decided that she should have babies and get married and live a proper life. So first kill me, use up all of your skills, all of your fairy dust or
power.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you can become a normal person, but you have to kill me to do it somehow. Logic thrown out the window for this finale. I could not stand what I was watching. Nothing made sense.
Yeah, like it's okay, Bill, you wanna die, that's fine. You can take care of that yourself. You do not have to force your long-suffering girlfriend to give up the elements of her that makes herself special. Understanding that he believed that Sookie wanted that, right?
But told
he's
her
taking away her agency. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty fucking gross. Yeah. All right. So that's a vote for True Blood. Karissa, where are you on this one?
I mean, I honestly don't hate either of these, but I hate the True Blood one less because the Game of Thrones one annoyed me to no end when it happened because my coworkers would not stop bitching about it every fucking day. Like all the way through the final season, but this finale, oh my God, it was weeks and weeks of it. And I'm just so annoyed. And yeah, I don't think it's terrible, but I'm moving it forward here because we have to talk about it because other people could not stop talking about it.
It's very true. Kevin, between True Blood and Game of Thrones, which one is worse?
I'm going to also give it to True Blood, and I'm going to name that this is the problem. The other thread that we've talked about is like ultimately like these are all like cult fan base shows and build to like high expectations of a finale. And boy, do I want to stick it to probably a huge cross section of Game of Thrones fans and Snyder Bros. So come at me. I hate you more. And I would welcome like another True Blood telling, and I could see them doing that. I've heard rumblings that might happen, but
yeah,
I'm less offended by the True Blood or the True Blood finale.
Are you less offended by the True Blood finale or less offended by the Game of Thrones?
Sorry. Oh God, this is so confusing.
It's confusing, and like we've never done a worst before.
Oh my
so which
goodness.
one is worse, True Blood or Game of Thrones?
I'm gonna say that I think True Blood is worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything that's been said thus far, and no, you're good. I think one of the things that I'm gonna pick up on is Kevin and Carissa's threads. Number one, Carissa's, everybody was talking about how much they hate this. And of the 550 plus people who took the poll for this episode, more than 50% of them voted for Game of Thrones. the fact that everybody hates the Game of Thrones finale has almost become its own mythology at this point. And I do think at a certain point, we do this a lot in pop culture. We make something into this huge thing and then we gleefully tear it apart. And that's what I think happened with Game of Thrones. Now, do not get me wrong. The last season is incredibly rushed. It is broken because of how rushed it is. The pacing is, at the end of the day, what cripples that show from a kind of long-term experience. But we're looking strictly at that last episode. I think it's actually pretty successful. There are storylines that end almost comedically perfunctorily. Cersei and Jaime just getting crushed by a rock is so it's really dumb. Like, I'm sorry, it's stupid. But the broad strokes of it, I think, are actually very true to the show and the characters. And people lose their minds over Daenerys going nuts and blowing up King's Landing. And I'm sorry, if you have been watching that show from the beginning, Daenerys has gone nuts multiple times and has killed many, many people because she's pissed off. It wasn't out of character. It was actually very much in character for her. I think Jon and Daenerys are ultimately the two protagonists of this show at the end of the day. They both get endings that make sense for those characters. And I think if we're talking about Bran ending up on the Iron Throne, if the whole point was it was the end of a patriarchal line, how better to reset it into a semi-democracy than having a person on the throne who cannot reproduce. It actually all makes sense. I agree with Kevin's point that a big part of the problem with this is everybody had their own individual conspiracy theories. And they thought they were so smart and they expected this, that, and the other thing to happen. And when it didn't, they felt as though they had been robbed. And that is ridiculous fan entitlement that was never happening before the internet. It wasn't. Come at me, tell me. You like, was that happening at Twin Peaks? I don't think so. Not to the extent that it is now. And people have got to get over themselves. This is my soapbox moment for all those people who are sitting there crying about how terrible the Game of Thrones finale is. I'm casting reflect. Look at yourself. Look at your choices. You are the reason. You're projecting your own
Who is that girl I see?
It's not Daenerys. She's out burning down the fucking town. No, I really do think, like, look at yourself and figure out why you're so disappointed. Let the people tell the story they want to tell. That's my soapbox. So I think we have Carissa's for True Blood.
Yes.
And the rest of us are for... no, wait. Carissa is for...
Yes.
The other three of us are for True Blood is worse, which means
Yes.
True Blood advances. It's an ultimate number one seed, but I think the people who voted that way were wrong, and I'm standing by it. Come at me. Next, 1 seed Pretty Little Liars versus 2 seed Gossip Girl. It's a CW/freeform, mysterious character, just delightfully screwing up people's lives. I'm going to start with Kevin. Where are you?
Oh, Gossip Girl is the worst finale of these two. I was never I'll be honest, I didn't watch Pretty Little Liars, so I don't have as much stake in that game, but I know that and it's interesting that Pretty Little Liars is the 1 seed here, though, but I know more people who are way more pissed off by the Gossip Girl finale because that Dan Humphries reveal is fucking terrible.
I like your little set of music there. Carissa, where are you?
Yeah, but so I'm the opposite. I'm with Pretty Little Liars here. I didn't watch Gossip Girl, but at least the reveal is a character that existed in the series before the finale, which is not the case with Pretty Little Liars. It's a, whoop, welcome to this, and also now you're gone. Yeah, I'm with Pretty Little Liars here.
Joelle.
I think what I'm seeing here is the difference between was the whole episode bad or just the reveal bad? And I think with Pretty Little Liars, the entire episode was terrible and weird. And Gossip Girl, we liked a lot of it, right? Like the whole Lisa Loeb of it all. I'm never going to be mad at Lisa Loeb's on TV. So frankly, the Dan Humphrey reveal is irrelevant because Lisa Loeb. So I'm going with Pretty Little Liars.
Oh,
Lisa Loeb trumps Dan Humphrey's reveal. I like this. Also, if you're listening to this and you're working on a series finale that you know is going to be terrible, find a way to bring Lisa Loeb in. And you're going to be, all sins are forgiven. All of them. I am with Carissa's logic that you cannot fucking have a character that nobody, like, just from good mystery writing, you don't just have a total magical invented character at 12:59 Is it 12:59 a thing? I don't know. Whatever it is.
11:59.
11:59.
That's the one. I didn't go to school for math. 11:59 on the clock. Come in and being like, boop, gotcha. Like it's bad writing. It's bad mystery work, and it's a cop out. The Dan thing makes no sense. It was bad, but the Pretty Little Liars of it all, I'm giving it to them. So Pretty Little Liars will advance to round 3. Next, in a fairly shocking development, it is a unanimous decision in round 3, this time for 1 seed How I Met Your Mother, which dismissed 3 seed Killing Eve. Joelle wanted to get her licks in on Eve before she went away, and I'm going to open up the pinata smashing of Him with Kevin. Joelle, talk about Killing Eve first.
I like hearing hymn as a word. That's delightful.
That's how I always see it in my head.
That's the same, but I've never heard anyone say it out loud. The only thing, I have 2 notes on Killing Eve, and we can move on, but the episode title should have been called Kissing Eve. What a really missed opportunity. Also, no one ever killed Eve, so that's a bummer. And then it ended with a scream of anguish that will live in my head forever. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. The show was weird. It ended weird, but like, I don't know. That episode was sort of it ended in a whiff, I guess is what we've been saying. So,
but do you still believe that How I Met Your Mother is worse?
I absolutely do. That's a long standing, you wasted our time situation. Whereas Killing Eve, it wasn't long enough to have wasted my time.
And with that, Kevin, talk to us about how I Met Your Mother sucked ass.
Listen, kids, sit around while I waste 9 years of your life telling you about how I want to fuck my best friend who I told you I wasn't going to get married to. Oh, the reason that shows like this end up failing is because they do things like The Office actually ended up having a good series finale, but they do these things where the cast become producers on the show. So not only are they making actor money, but they're making producer money now. So they get to double up their paychecks and take in more in residuals and on the back end for a show in syndication. So that's why this show lasted longer than it should have. And then when you give me no plot details, essentially, on Ted Mosby meeting the mother, Christina Milioti, who's a great actress, I'm rambling on this, but the whole point of the show was basically Ted Mosby talking about how he was supposedly met the mother of his kids, and that was the premise of the show. And you get to this ending, which Joelle said is a whiff, where like the real ending is about how Robin or how Ted wants to go sleep with Robin, and he wasn't telling a story about how he met the mother of his kids. He was rationalizing his past love for a character that was been on the show for the whole 9 seasons. It's a very odd way to end what is meant to be a rom-com sitcom. It's actually a very dark thing to do, but I'm going to stop the piñata early. And I know we've got many more whacks to take at this show, so.
Absolutely. Karissa, you are for Himium continuing into round 4?
Yes, and partly just because I want to keep hearing you say that.
Yeah.
Himium.
And then finally in round 3, the majority of the panel continues to want to sail away and forget that 1 seed Dexter ever happened, but Karissa remains perplexed at all the time we wasted watching 2 seed Lost. Is that correct, Karissa? It's Lost versus Dexter? Are you going to go with Lost here?
Yes, I am, and I'm surprised I'm the only one.
You're not.
Okay. Oh, she's not. Okay, so let's go.
Thank God.
Karissa, why don't you first talk about Lost here?
Well, this is part of the tropes that we were talking about. And, there was so much fan speculation about Lost for so long. And it was such an interesting show in the early days. Like, people were so into it and trying to figure out what are the numbers. And, the opening of season 2, and then you find out what's under the hatch. And, there's so many mysteries all the way through that are just spun in so many ways. And then, surprise, turns out maybe it was just purgatory all along. Your plane crashed and it's like, it's basically the lazy, this was all a dream ending of something that that was so good at teasing out mysteries and would reveal things, but also introduce new things at the same time. So you never felt fully satisfied, but you were constantly also being satisfied. You were getting the answers. And then this is just like I don't know, it's just lazy, and it undoes so much work to be like, well, it never happened. Kind of like I hated the Newhart finale. So that's me. Like, I just don't like this as a trope, and really hated it here.
I think the extra layer of frustrating on the Lost finale is the showrunners had sworn up and down fairly early in the show's run, seasons 2 or 3, no, they're not all dead. It's not purgatory. That's not it. And like, it's basically they're all dead in purgatory. I mean, it is more complicated than that.
Don't believe white men in Hollywood. What can I tell you? I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't.
Amen. Yeah. So Joelle, are you with Dexter, or are you with Lost?
I'm with Lost. I have a lot of thoughts in addition to what Karissa said, but I don't know if I need to drop those in. Should I go with it, or?
I will say this, Kevin, are you going to vote for Dexter or Lost?
I'm voting for Dexter. I like the Lost finale.
Well,
I'm also voting for
put
Dexter,
my thoughts out there.
Let's do it, Joelle.
All right. So on top of everything Karissa has said, the thing that the show never quite delivered on was the answers. So, like, yes, they were answering things along the way, but there were mysteries upon mysteries upon mysteries, and we were all invested. We spent all this time, like, literally water cooler TV. This is like the one show I remember talking about with my coworkers in my 20s. It was like the thing. And then you get to this final season and you get to this ending, and it turns out nothing mattered. Not a single thing I spent time talking about and worrying about on the show and thinking, oh my God, what about this? What does the fucking smoke mean? What about the bear and the 4 toes? Eric, you mentioned the 4 toes. There's so much stuff that was just never, ever, ever, ever explained. And then, it turns out nothing matters. Did it even happen? It was frustrating. I remember like screaming at the TV that day. Like Dexter, I remember watching and going, well, that sucked. But it was like more of a stinker. Lost was infuriating.
Yeah, and I can see that. Here's where I'm coming down on this. I agree that the showrunners totally punted on all the mysteries that were arguably what made the show so popular, right? Kind of like House of Dragons, Game of Thrones. People got really invested in their own conspiracy theories, and I'm going to figure it out, and look at how smart I am, right? And the show absolutely encouraged that.
They did. They published books. Like, they were doing all sorts of stuff.
It was a perpetual motion machine, and it all contributed to it. But they also, I think it is satisfying, the finale, in the emotional arcs for many of the characters. And that's what the showrunners cared about. And this is one of the things we can put on our checklist of bad finales. There is a disconnect between what the showrunners care about and what the fandom cares about. And that happens in multiple different situations here. And the showrunners of Dexter never cared about the mysteries. They were always just there to keep people hooked. But they were talking about ultimately connection and how important and how essential human connection is. That's what Lost is about. Whereas with Dexter, that finale is a complete abandonment of everything to do with that show. I mean, this is a really smart man who has evaded capture after murdering, I don't even know how many people. He's got to be in the 3 digits with his murders. He's got to be. And he's avoided capture for a decade, basically. And now he's doing something that fucking stupid. I don't know. It just comes out of nowhere. And it was just like, someone's like, yeah, we got to wrap this up in,
Yeah, and there's a tornado. Have fun.
Let's just go to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. I just want to see some plaid. We want to see some plaid before the end of the show.
Yeah.
And a beard.
And a beard.
They were at the grocery store. They were in the paper towel aisle. They saw Brawny and they're like, Eureka, I got it. Like, inspiration. Yeah. It's so stupid. And so while the Lost absolutely fails on all of the lore stuff, it is successful in the emotional. Like, I teared up at the Lost finale, and I'm dead inside. And the only thing I felt with the Dexter finale was like, well, Jesus Christ. So I'm still with Dexter. You're still with Dexter, Kevin?
Yep.
Okay. Karissa and Joelle, it's ultimately a tie vote right now. Dexter is the 1 seed, so it would move forward, meaning Lost will get bounced. In my opinion, Lost should have been a 1 seed. It should have been in the final 4 over either Gossip Girl or Pretty Little Liars.
How Pretty Little Liars became a 1 seed, I'm a little bit baffled by, but yes.
Ma'am.
People hated it.
The girls are
get it.
But this Dexter Lost, this is my battle royale of the whole bracket.
Yeah, it could have been a final 2. Karissa, do you have any final thoughts if we are moving Dexter forward?
No, because I also really hated Dexter.
Right.
But
It's
I think
really
what
bad.
Lost like rewrites it, wins it for me because it rewrites stuff versus going off on a tangent, which is what happens with Dexter.
Yeah,
So,
change the rules.
yeah, you can't do that, man. We had an understanding.
We had an understanding. So with that being said, we are going to move Dexter into the final 4. With that, we are at the end of this round. We're going to take a quick break and figure out how to completely ignore the main premise of our show as we enter the home stretch. We'll be right back after these messages. And we are back with the final 4 of our worst TV series finale debate. At this point in the show, I always like to take a step back and see if the final 4 ended up where I thought it was. As previously mentioned, I don't really think Pretty Little Liars deserves to be here. I think we are talking about modern, terrible finales. Not having Lost here is a big missed opportunity, but it is what it is. I think the others all make sense. I do think Game of Thrones is going to be polarizing not being on here, but I think we made compelling arguments for why it's actually not that bad. Calm down, Mary. Okay, so let's get into it. True Blood, a 2 seed versus Pretty Little Liars, a 1 seed. I'm going to start with Joelle. Where are you on this one?
I'm still with True Blood. I think the finale of True Blood actually offended me in the time I spent on that show. So I'm sticking with True Blood.
All right, Karissa?
I'm with Pretty Little Liars, the identical twin that no one knew existed. I just can't get over it.
Kevin?
I did not watch one of these shows, and I did watch one of these shows. And so I'm voting for True Blood.
Karissa, you've done a really great job getting Pretty Little Liars up to this point, and I do agree that the last minute, like, oh, there was a secret evil twin all along is some bullshit. But True Blood did the ultimate offense to me, which was it was boring. We used to all get together to watch True Blood on Sunday nights, and we would howl. There are some hilarious, filthy moments on that show, and the finale gave us none of that. It was dull. It was dreary. It was sad male pain. And like, again, what the showrunners want versus what the viewers want. The viewers wanted none of that from True Blood. We wanted asses and we wanted titties and we wanted fangs and we wanted blood. And I'm sorry.
Instead, we got a wedding.
Ugh.
A really boring, sad 5-person wedding. It was so terrible.
It was
In a living room. I mean, that decor alone, that overstuffed couch.
They didn't get the framing right. Like they were half off screen. The whole thing was poorly last minute done. You could just tell they threw that scene together. It's ridiculous.
How dreadful is what I have to say. So for that reason, I'm okay moving it to the final 2. Next, it's How I Met Your Mother versus Dexter, 2 1 seeds. Karissa, where are you on this one?
I did not watch Him. I did watch Dexter all the way to the very end. And so I'm with Dexter. The best thing about that finale is that white to pink dip dye dress that she wears. Like, everything else is trash.
Kevin, where are you?
I would love to hear Joelle beat the piñata further. So I'm just going to quickly say him for me because, oh boy, let the beating begin.
Joelle.
So Him, this is the moment where I'm going to tell my brother to start listening because he and I have had this debate for when did that show air? A decade now, almost. Yeah. He loved the finale of Him, and I did not. I was angry that Robin became a different person at the end of that show. She became this sad, lonely woman that didn't know how to relate to her friends anymore, and that made no sense to me whatsoever. They were just like, oh, she can't have babies, so now she's sad. I don't like that writing. I think that is unfair to a really cool, wonderful Robin Sparkles of a character. Also, they regressed Barney. He spent an entire 8-9 years growing, evolving, becoming a better person. And then he just went back to his ways because his relationship with Robin didn't work out. So forget about the whole fuck it all with killing off the mother, which, by the way, fuck that. They ruined some of the best characters from the show. Marshall and Lily were like barely even in it. They were just little like side Rosencrantz and Guildenstern over there, not doing a whole lot. And then the actual thing that, you know, is the big debate, killing off the mother that quickly. We finally see them get together. The cute umbrella scene, it's finally there. Within seconds, she's dead. Within seconds. If you watch like the pacing from seeing them together to her in that hospital bed, I don't think a full minute even goes by. And that's crazy that we never really see this lead up to this relationship. We never really see it come together. They just immediately kill her off. And then, oh, by the way, it was about Robin all along. No, you just spent an entire season convincing me that Robin and Barney were meant to be. The whole thing just led up to lies and whatever. And on top of everything else, they actually made an alternate ending because even they thought, uh-oh, the fans are really pissed. Hey, let's try this one. And people love the alternate ending because it actually makes sense.
Ending?
Oh, yeah,
where they don't kill the mother.
Oh.
They actually released it. It's on the DVD and you can probably find it on YouTube somewhere. But yeah, they end it with like, and that's how I met your mother. And they just show a happy ending.
Yeah.
The fact, frankly, Karissa, the fact that they knew it was going to be such a turkey of an ending, that they filmed another ending, but then didn't use it, to me is like, you are an incompetent buffoon.
Yep.
That's what they like. That's real.
And they're good at this though. Like they're good at like telling these stories and threading it throughout 9 seasons, and the throwbacks and the literally slapsgiving came back in the final episode. Like all of these things that like major whatever. There were so many different things in that show that I used to find so enjoyable. And in that finale, it all made me angry because they threw it all away. But they're better than this, and that's what bothered me.
Yeah. You brought up a good point that I wanted to raise quick, is the whole last season is about set up across like 2 days of Robin and Barney getting married and about their whole character growth. And then the finale completely chuffs that. Like that is what essentially is happening, which is why people hated the finale so much, because you had a whole season of character growth for 2 side characters.
So we have 2 of our different tropes that we've identified as bad TV series finales at play here. With Dexter, you have incompetence, people behaving in ways that they don't really make any sense. And I think in How I Met Your Mother, it is the complete throwing away of the entire concept of the show and characters not behaving in a way that makes sense. So is it incompetence worse than deliberate decisions that betray the fandom? In my opinion, I give it to very deliberate decisions that betray the fandom. And not only that, they knew the fandom would feel betrayed and still stuck to their guns. So that's why I'm giving it to Him Yim here. Chris, are you going to be very upset? Is this the destruction of your bracket completely?
No, that's fine. You just said Him Yim again, and all was forgiven.
Okay, that's fine. Great. So we have a final 2 of True Blood, a 2 seed, versus Him Yim, a 1 seed. Kevin, where are you?
Him Yim.
It's starting to sound like some arcane
Red
spell.
rum.
That's exactly what I'm getting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joelle, where are you on this?
Can you come back to me? I need to think for an extra minute here.
Carissa?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the Him Yim finale, does the mother talk?
Yes.
She does, but not a lot.
She talks in previous
Okay.
episodes. Maybe that's what I'm remembering. There was a whole episode about her, like 3 episodes earlier. That was my favorite episode of that season.
To give you some context, Karissa, the whole you're finally revealed the mother in the last season, and you get cuts to her or flashbacks to her, but she's never really interacting with the core main characters. She barely engages with them. It's almost like they tack on a side character for the whole last season.
She could have been filmed separately.
She was fully filmed separately.
She green screened in.
Very green screened in, and they make you try and connect with her, but not in parallel with the actual characters who you followed for 9 years.
Yeah, because I watched the finale, and I don't know if I remember thinking it was weird because she doesn't talk, or maybe she talks a little bit in that episode, but not very much. And you know how I feel about a woman who's not allowed to speak. So I'm going to move forward Himyam here.
Joelle.
So the only thing I will say in defense of Himyam is that it did have Billy Zabka in the final season, and he was in the finale. So not quite the Lisa Loeb argument, but definitely a small little bit of well, at least they had Zabka. No, I think to your point, Karissa, I don't think she talks to a woman also when she does talk in the final episode.
So
again,
definitely doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
Exactly. She has agency earlier in the season, and we meet her friend and her roommate, and she talks to all the other women at some point. But in that final episode, I don't think she talks to any women. I think she only talks to Ted.
Well, that's a thumbs down for me.
I think I'm sticking with How I Met Your Mother. That's the OG for me, whereas True Blood is a recent hatred because I didn't watch it originally when it aired.
I did watch True Blood when it originally aired, and again, I think its biggest sin was being boring and decidedly not sexy. How I Met Your Mother is a real betrayal of everything that the show had been, and so for that reason, I give it a clean sweep for How I Met Your Mother. There you have it. Our pick for the worst TV series finale is How I Met Your Mother. Do you agree? Do you think that we should get lost somewhere in the Pacific Northwest? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment of this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com, or find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to like and rate the episode on the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you listen on. I want to say thank you to my panel. I won't recast any of you when we reboot in a few years in a desperate IP cash grab. And thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you get even more exclusive content and you get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one. And remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. Just the worst.